What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Connor Rogers. Jets Dolphins week, Monday Night Football. Get excited, America. 0-3 Jets going to the 0-3 Dolphins. And Connor, we got a lot of news to talk about. There's Jets had
Oddly enough,
like 5 transactions today. So how you doing? How you feeling? And then we're going to talk some news. Then we're going to talk some Muji. And then we're going to talk some Jets Dolphins. How's it going?
pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's been a very interesting week already. I'm very curious to get even more injury clarity through the actual reports of guys that were, of course, not put on IR. And that goes from a lot of the top end guys, right? Is Justin Fields out of protocol and is he going to start? I would think if he's okay, they're going to start him, but we'll see. So. Yeah. The Sauce Gardner, obviously, keep an eye on him because now they've acquired a corner. There's a lot of different movement. Obviously now they're banged up at linebacker as well, so they're playing a lot of roster gymnastics with that position specifically. So, yeah, I'm pretty good. It's one of those things, though, where it's not a good feeling that if they lose Monday, like the season really is over, right? Not over from a standpoint of we'll still do all the podcasts and cover every step of the team, but from an actual, can you talk yourself into just hanging around the fringe of an AFC? Yeah. I didn't pick the Jets to make the wild card this year. It's not even what I'm saying, but like, can you actually mathematically be involved, right? Especially when you have one of the Chiefs or the Ravens is going to be 1-3 after next week as they play each other. Joe Burrow is out for the regular season. I mean, the Texans look awful.
Texans
right?
0-3, Ravens 1-2. It's a weird year so far.
The AFC East, besides the Bills, is flat out awful.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things where, like, I picked the Jets to win 7 games this year, but I really would have liked them to surprise me and win 8 or 9, right? Yeah. Like win 8 or 9 and be really interesting in November where we're gearing up for a game. So that's not over yet. I'm not saying it is, but that's why Monday, it feels high stakes. And I don't think just because it's a primetime Monday night game, it feels like if you actually are showing progress, you beat a Miami team that kind of feels like they're almost out of bullets here. I mean, I understand they fought against Buffalo, but they still lost. The coach is hanging on by a thread. There's a lot of problems over there, but the Jets aren't favored in this game, by the way. So here we go.
Miami 2.5. I'll save a little more for this for the end of the pod, but I don't say this often. They have to win this game. And I just think
you have to win this game.
You have to win this game. And I'm not saying the Jets are better than Miami and it's like definitive, but for where these two teams are at right now, you got to win this game. And I think like what you said, you lose this game, we're talking probably about a 4 or 5 win team. You win this game, we can still talk about maybe being a 7-win team when you look at the next 5 that are upcoming after it, really the next 6, because that includes the Pats. Like, it's a soft-ass stretch of the schedule. And I know the Jets are circled as a win on everyone's schedule, but listen, I'd rather be playing the Panthers and the Bengals without Burrow and the Pats than playing the Bucks and the Bills and Mike Tomlin and the Steelers even. So we're gonna get into that. Goddamn, they do have to win, and I can't lose another primetime game. I've seen so many primetime losses, like my brain can't take it anymore. Transaction
division games, man.
Yes, you have to beat the other bad teams in your division. The Dolphins are bad and the Pats are bad. Bills are great. The other 2 teams stink. You got to find a way to beat them. So today we get another trade out of nowhere. So we get a cornerback, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., very similar to the Briggs and Harrison Phillips trades. Late round pick swaps. This is a young guy. Briggs young, Phillips relatively young. Guys that are cost controlled than you're going to have here for multiple years. Cornerback in his second year who, from my early perusing, Titan fans seem furious that they traded away. A guy who very physical, very good against the run, very feisty, a bit of an asshole for us talking about the asshole energy the team needs, struggles with penalties, and just interesting with the position. Because we were talking before we got on air, and you could go 3 different ways with this. I also flagged that he was banged up last week and didn't play, and I don't know if he's going to be ready to play this week. I think he might be out for a week or 2.
He was in a boot last week.
Yeah, so it could even be longer than that. Is Sauce Gardner a little banged up? Are you worried about that? Are you coming to reality with how bad Brandon Stevens is at outside corner and thinking like, oh shit, maybe we do have to try him at safety or in the slot or just something different with him? Or this is a guy who's played a little slot at different times in his college career. Are we not sure on Michael Carter if he's a long-term building block here because we didn't pay him? it could be a mix of all three. And this could very much be the Jets saying, you know what, it's year one, maybe it's year zero, depending on the conversation with Woody. And we're just going to throw a lot of shit against the wall and see who sticks and who doesn't stick. And the price is little. And these are all effectively like day 3 draft picks. And, if we go back and we reset it and we just sign Briggs and we sign Phillips and we traded for this guy, and you kind of swap out some of the other lower tier moves we made of, Nandi and Cowart and Tefele and some of the other things, like it's all going to come out in the wash because we're going to use this year to evaluate them. Before we get into the player and talk about some of the stuff at linebacker, because there's unfortunately a lot of news there, I feel like, and I'm not going into conspiracy theory mode, but just from a distance, I feel like something happened at a certain point in the Jets offseason, like 9 weeks ago, that someone different got in Muji's ear, or there was some level of turnover in the scouting department who had voices, because there was like the first half of the offseason, which had the Stevens contract, this like head scratching day 3, which we're going to continue to harp on over and over again. All the defensive tackles I just named, none of whom are a factor or even on the team anymore this year. And then all of a sudden you have 3 trades in 5 weeks, and all kind of similar trades where it's not like the Jets went and traded for like a 31-year-old starting receiver to plug in the lineup. They traded like middle of the roster guys to come in and compete. And it's almost like someone like, I don't even know if these moves are all going to prove to be great, although Phillips and Briggs have looked good so far. We'll see about Brownlee, and you could talk a little bit more about who that player is from when you scouted him. I just feel like someone else got in Muji's ear. And I just don't know what it is, but it feels like something flipped. Do you sense that at all? Because it's weird for a team, certainly for the Jets, to make this many trades structured this way in a short period of time.
I agree. I definitely agree. It does feel like, I don't know if philosophy switched, because teams trade players, throughout the draft season, end of the summer, and you see more trades during cuts, because look at the Browns. Like I watched the Browns tape this week, by the way, one of the best defenses in the NFL, and just beat Green Bay. They were a 4.5 win team before the year. And when I watched him, I was like, oh, now I know why they gave Juwan Briggs to the Jets. And Juwan Briggs has been a really nice acquisition for the Jets in his rotational role. The Browns have like 8 defensive tackles that are absolute killers. They're just so loaded there. That's why trades like that happen. It's like, hey, our position group, we really like it. Instead of just cutting a guy, let's try to get a late day 3 pick or a pick swap for him and move on in that kind of way. And that's good work by the Jets, capitalizing on a team that has excess at a position. And then Harrison Phillips was more of the Vikings were clearing his cap space, and they felt like they could survive without him. And the Jets have desperately needed a run-stopping nose tackle, and that's exactly what he's been. Brownlee is one that nobody can really figure out, right? Because this is someone that my first taste of scouting him was when he got to the Senior Bowl, and he looked really good at the Senior Bowl. He played over 2,500 snaps at both Louisville and Florida State. So he played a lot of college football, but he was just so feisty and competitive and physical. And I know I haven't followed his NFL career closely as people that follow the Titans and cover the Titans, but it does seem like penalties have been an issue. He gets grabby, but he's been a good young player for that team overall. And he is highly competitive and highly physical against the run. I have a lot of working theories with this one. Let's go back to big picture before we talk about just the cornerback room. Number one, I said it from the jump, and I hate that I feel very correct about it. The Jets, fell on their face on day 3 of the draft this year. And yeah, I get it. I wouldn't want to be judged for my rankings after 3 weeks of an NFL season. I like to be given at least 3 years or 2 years. But there's nothing that should improve your confidence of when they've went so far away from consensus on almost every player they took on day 3, besides Malachi Moore, right? So, by the way, Malachi Moore is going to be in the film review I'm doing. He has his rookie hiccups as well, but he also has some moments. Arian Smith, not a typical 4th-round prospect. They put Tyler Barron on the field. You were saying to me before we recorded, like, this guy doesn't look like an NFL player. I didn't think he was anything as a prospect. They are bringing in all these linebackers when they just took one in the 5th round, so they have no interest in playing him.
Yeah.
And they
tells you everything you need to know.
By the way, they traded up for some of these guys. Like, they use real draft capital to get some of these guys. So it's not just that they overdrafted certain players, but they just maybe, Joe, they actually realized the mistakes they made at one, not addressing defensive tackle at all, besides washed up free agents on minimum contracts. And that's why they made those moves. And then two, corner's kind of a weird one, right? Because you're sitting there and you're like, we still haven't acquired a receiver. There's plenty of other positions we felt like we needed depth at more than this. Honestly, I thought this team needed a third tight end for the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
And Rucker, while he's made steps this year, is still a bad blocker. He's not a good enough blocker. That's been a problem, but they didn't acquire a guy like that. With Brownlee, I look a little deeper into this one. I just wonder, even if this isn't the type of move you make if Sauce is missing a game. You know what I mean? You don't. Number one, I think they got good value here. I think Brownlee is better than a 6th and 7th round pick swap. He is, unless there's things that like we just don't know. And I know he's a little banged up right now, but it's not like he has a torn ACL. He has played better than that value. So that's odd. And I know a lot of people that cover Tennessee or are fans of Tennessee are very disappointed at that return and didn't expect him to be traded. I think number two, this is a regime frontlined by Aaron Glenn that has been feeling out what he has in the building.
Yeah.
And I think he's bringing in guys that are more in lockstep with him and eventually weeding out guys from the previous regime. And I think he needs more than one free agency to do that. But now they're trying to do the like, hey, day 3 picks, especially 6th and 7th rounders, they have a very low hit rate. Let's get something we know what it is, who they are instead, and then we'll try to draft rounds 1 through 4, 1 through 5. Like Brownlee most likely is going to be a better NFL corner than anybody you take at cornerback in the 6th or 7th round next year. There's always a chance, but I'm talking about running the actual odds. If you ran every 6th and 7th rounder taken over the last 25 years who had an NFL career beyond 2 years, anything like that. So that's the line of thinking with that. But really the third thing is you just kind of wonder if they just don't like the room they have right now. They clearly didn't like their interior defensive line room if they added 2 guys, and they shouldn't have. It wasn't any good besides Quinnen. The corner room, though, you paid Sauce as the top corner. Okay. Yep. You paid Stevens as a very high-end number 2. That was you. Yep. The previous regime paid Michael Carter. I don't think this regime and coaching staff likes small corners. We like Michael Carter on this show. He's a great NFL story. He's a very smart player. I actually honestly think the Jets are so pathetic at safety. I actually think he could help them at safety right now, but I don't think they're going to do that. I am leaning where I'm like, I'd be surprised if Michael Carter is not a cap casualty after this year. As much as it pains us to say, I feel somewhat unfortunately confident in that. I just don't think they're invested in him. They might realize that Stevens is bad, and they already need to get ahead of that. So they might look at this and go, well, if Stevens can't play, we're going to move on from Carter. Maybe next year we're looking at Brownlee in the slot and Azareye'h Thomas and Sauce on the outside, and the value added up for us right now. He's a Glenn kind of corner. Like, he likes to tackle. He's physical. He's grabby, but he is physical in man coverage. So this, to me, unlike the D-line one, was like, we kind of want to shake things up and maybe even send a message right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a minimum, that transaction is a shot across the bow to a guy like Stevens coming off a really bad game where he allowed another touchdown. He couldn't tackle. And I don't disagree about Carter, who's also just been a little banged up. And I could see both him and Quincy, again, being these previous regime type players who just aren't here next year. It doesn't mean they're not going to go somewhere else and be productive NFL players, but that kind of lineup that you mapped out, that would make a little more sense. We know Chris Harris coached him previously, so there's a history with the player, and I'm sure he advocated going to get him. We know we're going to see Thomas sooner rather than later. He already played, and he held up all right in a small sample size, and there's too many measurables, and that was potentially too good of a pick of too good of value to keep him on the sideline. And I'm sure in the Jets' mind, now they're starting to say, our corners for the next few years are probably going to be Sauce and Thomas. How do we round that room out and have some more depth? Because even from a depth perspective, we like Stickers, but we don't know if they view him as a safety or a corner. And again, he's not someone that they drafted. So
you have to always remember that last part.
Yes. It's like, so we turned over the D-line room. Now it's like, we want to make it our cornerback room, for better or worse.
So, you have to remember with new regimes, I have been fortunate enough to sit down with somebody after they got hired in a higher end executive role and just pick their brain on what it's like acquiring a roster that wasn't theirs. That was bad. That was really bad. And I remember we sat there over quite a few beers. Like, this was a long conversation, and they are so picky when they get there, because you don't want to ride it out with a player that wasn't your choosing, because like you don't want to die on that sword. You'd rather die on your own sword. And so think of every 50-50 guy. If there's a guy on the team where it's like, yeah, he's fine, but we don't think he's as good as the money he makes, so we'd move on. Like, every 50-50 decision is punt the guy away. So they try to turn over the roster as much as they can. The problem is, too, this is a Jets team right now, some of their own doing with the regime and some not, that their resources are not great for a bad team. They're not. They don't have a third rounder this year because of the Hassan Reddick trade. They traded next year's fifth to go up and get Tyler Barron, which was their own doing, an idiotic
trade.
Like an idiotic trade. So now they're trying to be creative by getting. The thing is, the Jets can't suck next year, right? Like, the Jets can. People don't want to hear this. The Jets can really be bad this year, and I don't think anything's going to happen.
I agree.
Right? Like, that's kind of like I think the Jets could be like. I don't think the Jets are going to be picking 1, 2, or 3, but if they are, I don't really think anything would happen. But next year, you can't stink, and you need to accelerate your timeline. So I think the Jets are looking at it and going, well, a 2026 or 2020 day 3 pick is not going to give us anything. By the time they give us something, we might be fired. So Brownlee's already in year 2 of his development, and I told you he played over 2,500 snaps in college. So you feel better about where he is. You look at Briggs. Briggs is in year 2. And Briggs is, kind of know what he is now, and he has some upside. Harrison Phillips, you can keep him for his money next year. You have contract control of him next year if you want it. So to me, I think they made a lot of mistakes this spring. I think it was a regime that was entirely in over their heads. I think they hired a GM that was not particularly ready to be an NFL GM, especially when you can't bring all your people in time where you're making all these decisions. And now they're trying to give themselves a little bit of insurance. So I respect the creativity. I do. You'd rather get it right the first time. But I think this is a scenario where, going back to that combo with this person that I had, they are gonna try to make this 53-man roster look as different as they told you what they think of Garrett Wilson. They told you what they think of Sauce Gardner. But what did they think of John Simpson? What do they think of Elijah Vera Tucker and his lack of health? What do they think of these guys? So, the best part is you get all the answers over time.
Yeah, I think, and for the people who just listen to this and they're like, well, what about Michael Clemens? Because he just put out, again, the worst tape in NFL history. My guess, because we don't have to keep going down this road, is they thought very incorrectly that Tyler Barron could start to take that job from him as a backup to Jermaine.
Right.
We got Jermaine. He's ahead of schedule. He looked really good week 1. Jermaine, by the middle of the year, is going to be playing 60 to 70% of the snaps. His top backup is going to be Tyler Barron, who we liked a lot as a specialist pass rusher. We traded up to get him, and gradually we could phase Clemens out and just play him as like 12 snaps a game, run stopper, tough guy, whatever. Now, that was a very dumb line of thinking, because of course Jermaine is going to get banged up and you can't count on that. And Clemens is not good enough to have that role. And now Barron can't play. I said before we got on, he looks like Dylan Donahue without the DUI. And I could just see that from not even scouting him. Like, he just looks like he doesn't belong. And maybe the light will go on, but him in the open field with Baker Mayfield was kind of like all I needed to see. I was like, oh my God, this guy. I saw in the preseason too. Like, when he rotated in, you're like, this guy doesn't look, he looks like someone who's not going to be on a regular season roster. And he wouldn't have been if he wasn't a draft pick. I respect them trying something with McGregor. McGregor can't play. He's not an NFL player either. So at this point, it's like, do you try Watts? Do you try street free agent? Can you do one of these kind of trades for some team who is loaded at edge rusher and has a guy who's not playing that much and could just do something? So you could also counter and be like, look, like, Rome wasn't built in a day. One of the questions we're going to have in War Room is like, guys, remember what the Jets draft class was last year? It was Olu Fashanu, Malachi Corley, who's out of the NFL, the 2 running backs who are, backup role players, Stiggers, who's a backup role player, Jordan Travis and Jalen Key, who are out of the NFL. That's a hard thing to kind of inherit.
Yeah.
That's your second year class. So it could be like, look, like we're going to fix DT and corner this year. Next year, we're going to go crazy on edge and safety and receiver. Maybe. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's only week 4. Before we get to Miami talk, let's say that for this, we talked about Muji on the reaction pod. And I think the criticism was very valid. I also think there's been some weird like poking on guys like Olu and Will McDonald, who I don't think are anywhere near the problem on this team right now.
Let me tell you, I watched the 7 pressures that Olu gave up, and like you really, and listen, my podcast is like supported by Pro Football Focus, so I think if you're getting any fair opinion here, it's from me. I love PFF's software, their data, the people that work there, everything about it. Once in a while, what I think is a pressure might not be what they think is a pressure. And when I went and watched Olu's 7 pressures, I didn't come away with that he gave up 7 pressures. I'm not saying he had a perfect game, but there's a reason he gave up 7 pressures and no quarterback hits.
Yeah.
It's not like Tyrod Taylor's Lamar Jackson right now. He can move. But so, yeah,
of all the issues on this roster right now,
there's a lot of issues with this team. The 22-year-old left tackle is not even in the top 15.
I was going to say on my rewatch, I again left being like, this offensive line is pretty good. And Engstrom did not have a good game, but he was probably like 10% better than I thought he was. And I was reminded that while we like Tyrod, like he is an old backup for a reason.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of plays that he left on the field, which that is what it is. And it gave me a little more of like, let's hope Fields is healthy and you can get him back. Now, before we go fully Jets Miami with Muji,